evening. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Arlington Select Board on January 27th, 2025. I'm Select Board Chair Steve DeCourcy, beginning with board members to my right. Joining me this evening are
John Hurd.
Eric Helmuth.
Diane Mahan.
Leonard Diggins.
Jim Feeney, Town Manager.
Michael Cunningham, Town Council.
Ashley Marr, Board Administrator.
Tonight's meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format consistent with provisions in state law for remote participation in public meetings. Before we begin, please note the following. The meeting is being conducted in the Select Board chambers and over Zoom. It is being recorded and simultaneously broadcasted on ACMi. People wishing to join the meeting by Zoom may find information on how to do so on the town's website. People participating either in person or by Zoom are reminded that you may be visible to others and that if you wish to participate, we ask you to provide your full name and place of residence in the interest of developing a record of the meeting. Both Zoom participants and persons watching on ACMi can follow the posted agenda materials found on the town's website, specifically the Select Board Agendas and Minutes page. If technical difficulties sever the remote connection to one or more participants and efforts to reconnect within a reasonable period of time fail, the in-person meeting will continue at the discretion of the chair, provided that a quorum of the board is physically present. Zoom participants are encouraged to retain the phone number provided in their confirmation email for a backup audio connection to the meeting. There will be two opportunities for public comment tonight, one during open forum. Second, we are going to hear from the CDBG applicants this evening, so there'll be limited, but it will be presentations or narratives from the various applicants. If you are attending by Zoom and want to participate, please raise your hand when I announce that public comment is open. We have a full agenda tonight, so let's see how much of the town's business we can get done this evening. And with that, I will turn to item 2, the fiscal 2026 Town Manager's Budget Presentation by Mr. Feeney and Alex McGee, our Deputy Town Manager and Finance Director.
Now, he's a lefty, right? Or are you the lefty?
He's a lefty. Maybe we should go 4 hands up the middle here. Any hands out there?
Sorry, I don't know which is the best chair for a lefty, that's all.
And just while we're waiting for this to start, Mr. Feeney had submitted his budget on January 15th to the Select Board and to the Finance Committee, and Mr. McGee and Mr. Feeney will be presenting slides from the budget. The full budget is available on the Town Manager's webpage, I believe. And with that.
All right. Good evening, board members. Thank you for having us this evening for the opportunity to present at a high level the fiscal year 2026 budget presentation. Again, with me this evening is Deputy Town Manager and Finance Director Alex McGee. I would also like to recognize Lauren Costa, the Budget Coordinator, now in the Town Manager's office, as well as Treasurer Collector Julie Wayman for her ongoing support in the preparation of the budget document annually, despite her new role in the Treasurer's office. Of course, as we move through, we'll be speaking at a high level, but we welcome any questions. Please feel free to interject if anything is not clear or you'd like further explanation or additional information. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Alex to give just a brief overview and a recap of what this year's budget process has looked like to date and what it will look like for the remainder of the cycle.
All right, great. So briefly, we're going to look at the process, which Jim just noted. We'll do an overview and give highlights of this year, of the FY26 budget. We're going to note sort of the investments in response to the needs of the community that we anticipate making, and we'll note how we're maintaining the board's override commitments from the most recently passed override, and then we'll take a look at the long-term outlook at the end. Next slide, please. So, budget process. The budget development of the budget really is, it's almost a full year's worth of work. It's a lot of work spread over many months. As you all know, our fiscal year begins in July. Starting in August, that's when our capital budget requests are due to the town manager's office. We develop our budget on separate tracks, our operating budget on one or capital on the other. And so during the months of October through November, on a rolling basis, budget requests come in from the various departments throughout the town operations, and we meet internally with them as we begin developing the budget. By January, our budget books have been fully developed and delivered to the select board and the finance committee. So now, January through April, the finance committee is having hearings on the budget with department heads. We just had ours this morning, actually. In March, the financial plan is disseminated to the select board and the finance committee. In April, the finance committee report is submitted to town meeting that makes recommendations to the town meeting. In April, May, whenever the town meeting ends, the budget will be considered adopted at that point, and then in June, the fiscal year ends, and then the cycle really begins again. So it's a lot of work, and it's over the course of a year. And like Jim said, I'd like to echo a lot of thanks to Lauren Costa and Julie Wayman for their continued help. Next slide, please.
So we'll start on the revenue side of the equation. So the fiscal year 26 budget as proposed accounts for total revenues slightly in excess of $234 million to fund everything we do in town across the board. As is always the case, property tax revenues account for 75% of the money we receive annually. This year's budget assumes obviously a 2.5% growth in accordance with Proposition 2.5, but as well as $850,000 in new growth. Moving on to local receipts, again, that we continue to have historically conservative revenue estimates there, and have held true to what has been the standard for projecting motor vehicle excise tax to grow by $100,000 annually. We made some other targeted revenue adjustments within the local receipts category that I'll mention. We have corrected for contractual building rental increases as a result of a few public RFP processes we did for town buildings of note, including 23 Maple Street and 17 Irving Street. And we also factored in a possible reduction in rent at 85 Park Ave, which is the building occupied by ACMi. So in total, in that line within local receipts, there's a net increase of $33,000. We've also projected ambulance revenues to increase by an additional $50,000 from our fiscal year 25 estimate. We continue to normalize increased revenues associated with the Arlington Fire Department, performing all of what we know as the BLS runs, or basic life support runs. So that increase, again, is modest compared to our trailing 2 years of actual collections, and further does not account for increased billing rates associated with a newly approved suite of Medicare ambulance billing rates that just went into effect for calendar year 2025, and for which our private insurance billing rates will soon be reset against those newly increased rates. So moving on to meals tax, that was bumped by $25,000 in terms of the revenue projection for fiscal year 26. So that was up from $475,000 in fiscal 25. Collections here have more than rebounded from the pandemic, and that continues to project to be a strong source of revenue. And I will note that $25,000 increase still leaves the town with a conservative assumption in that line. And then finally, one line that we are decreasing is that associated with marijuana revenues. In fact, collections have lagged behind projections for fiscal year 24 actual as compared to projections, and they are lagging again in fiscal year '25. So for fiscal year '26 to remain consistent with conservative revenue estimation, we have reset the revenue projection to be slightly below fiscal year '24 actuals to ensure that we don't run into a shortage on that line. And then finally, state aid is another variable source of revenue for the town. This year projected to account for $29,302,310. This budget, which is prepared and printed a few weeks prior to the governor releasing her budget, this year known as House 1, we had projected or carried a 1% growth estimate for what we know is UGA, as well as Chapter 70 education aid. And we just got our preliminary cherry sheet estimates. So when we compare those against the proposed budget before you this evening, we're already showing a very net favorable position to the town by, roughly $550,000. Of note, per pupil minimum aid was proposed at $75 per student. At first glance, that may seem like a less than favorable projection because the fiscal year '25 per pupil aid figure finalized at $104 per student. But it's worth noting this $75 proposed funding level per pupil reflects a historically strong starting position. So last year it began at, I believe, $30 per student and ended at $105 per student. So I would view favorably this news as sort of there being a new low water mark, for lack of a better term, with where we're starting on per pupil minimum aid. But of course, to stay true to last year, we would need that number to increase as the Commonwealth's budget proceeds through the process this cycle.
Are we going to do questions at the end, or as he goes?
Well, I was going to turn, do you want to just do certain areas? Maybe we just finished the budget revenue overview. If we have questions on that, maybe that would be a good point, and then we can do expenses and then just miscellaneous items. Is that okay with you, Mr.
That
Feeney?
works perfectly well. So, I'll turn it over to Alex to speak a little bit about, some of the categories I didn't touch upon, and then open it up for revenue questions.
All right, just briefly, this just gives a visual representation of the chart. As you can see, the lion's share, almost 75% of our revenue comes from property taxes. Local receipts, which are things that are produced and collected locally. That's the orange slice of the pie, a little under $10.5 million. State aid, mostly made up of UGA and student aid, Chapter 70 student aid, $29 million. Free cash, we have a policy here of using half of our most recently certified free cash as a revenue source. That is $10.3 million. Other funds come from excess overlay, which is called upon and released annually by the Board of Assessors, and then override stabilization fund of just under $9.4 million used to balance the budget, and then transfers in and offsets. These are various offsets that are used from various sources, mostly the water and sewer enterprise, to help float our operation. And all in, as Jim noted, they total about $234 million.
Great, okay. Thank you. So with that, I will open it up to any questions on revenues. Mrs. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that is good news on minimum aid. Many years ago, when the minimum aid formula went into effect, Arlington, along with it was like 152, 157 of the 351 communities got $0 for minimum aid. And others, which needed the money and were well-deserving, like Lawrence, Lowell, Haverhill, et cetera, got, anywhere from $1,300 to $3,000 per student. And that was one of the first things I worked on. even had our then state rep, Mr. Marzilli, work against it. So that is good news, and the starting point was $30 last year. So hearing that it starts at 75, that is very good news for Arlington. But my question on revenues was, and I believe it may already be folded in the numbers that you gave us regarding state aid with House One, Governor Healy's budget coming out. I was wondering if, you could tell, from what I've been reading, the governor has said that Chapter 70 would be somewhat or perhaps substantially increased to cities and towns. And I was wondering if that's true, if that's the case with Arlington, and those approximate increased dollars, is that part of the dollars that you're saying under state aid may be up to an additional $500,000 more, or is there another number on top of that? That's the question I have.
So, Mr. Feeney?
Sure. So with respect to the reported increases in Chapter 70 funding, that is across the board. But again, Arlington is essentially a minimum aid community. So what we're relying on is that per pupil minimum aid figure. So that's what's comprising our Chapter 70 allocation in that respect. But that, roughly $550,000 sum I mentioned is all state aid net of all of our charges and assessments. So, right, it exists as both a revenue and an expenditure because that's, our assessment for funding the MBTA comes out of there. Charter school tuitions and a number of other sources are reduced from our state aid figure. So that change is net of all of the categories combined.
And what about Chapter 9, what roads and Chapter 90, people are asking me about, is that money getting increased? Are we going to have more monies to repair our roads, our bridges with the flooding? And I don't know if that's out of House One or if that's federal dollars, if that's something you could speak to briefly.
So briefly, Chapter 90, we will be seeing an increase in fiscal year 26 due to a second tranche of funding as proposed by the governor for Chapter 90 projects to be funded from basically the fair share surcharge. And I think that's going to be between $200,000 and $300,000 additional
For us.
for Arlington specifically. And they're applying the first tranche of money with the traditional foundational formula for Chapter 90 disbursements. And then the second tranche is based solely, I believe, on roadway miles, which happens to be a category, though Arlington is only 5.5 square miles, we do have a roadway network of 125 centerline miles, so we tend to score highly in that metric. So we will see additional Chapter 90 funding because of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mott. Any other questions? Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on the marijuana revenues, and just wondering about what you attribute the lower thing. I mean, the one thing obviously may come to mind would be the delay in the newest business taking root, but is it that, is it other things? And then secondarily, what do you anticipate that those revenues will kind of stay at that lower rate in future years? Or what's your projecting them right now?
Initial projection is we believe that they should stay about level unless and until a third establishment opens locally. We don't have yet a clear explanation as to why they sort of went up and then sort of leveled off and started to decrease, other than we believe that the number of licenses issued by the Commonwealth has continued to increase over the past few years, and perhaps we are no longer experiencing demand from outside of Arlington because customers now have an establishment closer to home.
So our estimates weren't counting on that third licensee. This is just whatever this market's doing.
We are not accounting for any potential revenue from operating a third establishment locally yet.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that is consistent with what a number of marijuana businesses are reporting, is that there's a lot of price pressure right now and a lot of competition, which is just a new reality I think that the industry is having to sort out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Any other questions on revenue? Okay.
All right, so next slide, please. So we can shift gears over to expenditures. And this encompasses, everything that we're spending money on within this budget. And so we'll start with our municipal departmental appropriations at $47.6 million. This represents a 3.14% increase in our expenditures. Our offsets at 3.27 million. We'll note that this only grows at 1.69%, which is, we'll have a little impact down the road here, we'll show you. So what we call the taxation total, which is our appropriations net of our indirect costs, our offsets, grows at exactly 3.25%. Now, the school department, we'll just work our way down this chart. Arlington Public Schools is coming in at $103.6 million. It's an increase of 7.37%. And this number is potentially maybe a little misleading. It's their normal growth figures, which are 3.5% for their general education budget, 6.5% for their special education budget. And then part of the override, a promise was made to add $1.7 million on top of that figure. Once we account for new student enrollment, which is increasing, that's how we land at that 7.37% increase figure. Minuteman School is coming in with a decrease of $44,000, which is welcome news. Our non-departmental, so sort of our overhead costs, healthcare and pension, are growing at 8.8%. And this is roughly 5.5% for pensions, and we're carrying a 10% on our healthcare line. We'll have more information on that in the coming weeks as the GIC finalize their figures, and we're then able to apply that to all of our plan holders in town. We'll get an exact number for that. Our capital plan, as is our annual tradition, is 5% of our revenues. And that and then includes any exempt debt on top of that, which builds to that $24.2 million number. Warrant articles are down about 10% for the time being. And a couple of reasons why that may be is we're not carrying any money for the 250th, which will have passed by the time FY26 is here. And the Fox Library warrant article is not being included because that was a one-time expense. Reserve fund, which is 1% of our budget, is coming in at $2.08 million, and $600,000 being put into the overlay reserve to account for likely uncollected taxes and potential abatements. So all those built our total bottom line figure of these expenditures of $225 million.
So here again, on the expenditure side of the equation is just another pie chart that represents all of the figures that Alex just went through. At a very high level, when I look at this chart, and I've done this in this room for the Civic Academy as well, if you look at the bottom of the chart and you sort of add together the school department and the Minuteman School, the town of Arlington spends approximately 50% of its money on public education. And then moving clockwise, if you take the slices of pie colored in green and navy blue, you'll see that we spend roughly another 25% of our money on what I would call fixed operating overhead. So that is your pension and health insurance liabilities. And with respect to capital and debt service, those are your fixed assets, as well as property insurance on those assets as well. So, that is the next largest source of where we spend our money. And then I would group largely the remainder of spending with, about a quarter of our money go to delivering municipal operations or town services, as we call them.
Mr. Feeney, just a quick question on Minuteman, which is good news. That number went down. I know you had forwarded something to us that you had received from Minuteman, but I'm wondering, is this decrease due to Arlington having this past year fewer students relative to the other in-district communities, or is it an increase in state aid? I don't know if there's anything that's leading to the decrease. It's welcome news, given the increases that we've seen over the past several years.
I think it is a combination of both of those things you referenced, Mr. Chair, as well as, I think there was some final debt that was ultimately not incurred for the building project that perhaps had been projected as part of the budget that didn't ultimately need to be borrowed.
Thank you. Any questions on expenses? Mrs. Mahan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Group Insurance Commission, GIC, and I understand that, I think they'll codify and take a vote first week of February, February 5th, February 6th. And it's my understanding, I'm just reading from my notes, from everything that I've seen, that this is either the 6th or 8th year that they're basically, I think, going to hold the line and not recommend increases in co-payments or deductibles. Is that what you're calculating in these figures?
This is only covering what they've projected to be premium increases for, so this would be the employer share of premiums for our employees.
Okay, but if they say that, if they're, putting out for their meetings and their votes, that they're basically going to hold the line and not change anything to it and keep it status quo, with the exception of there's naturally going to be increase in terms of numbers of employees that need to be covered in extenuating circumstances. The same holds true on the converse for the town side, portion side. We don't anticipate any sort of like cost line shifting issues, which would be a big.
Nope, we would project all of our cost-sharing percentages for our, various plans and employees based on their anniversary date to remain steady.
Okay. And with the transition of the new presidency and some of the talk that we're hearing coming out of Washington, D.C., if some of the changes are implemented, GIC is pretty much held harmless in the sense that it's separate from that. We don't anticipate seeing any federal, because I know in there, in the GIC, they tout, at least on the employee side, that there's going to be better access for musculoskeletal, fertility, infertility, mental health, diabetes, cost to the employees. And I'm assuming that, hearing what we're hearing coming out of Washington, D.C., GIC is sort of insulated from any decision that makes, at least for this year.
While we have not heard anything specifically, I think that's a fair assessment that we are largely insulated on the private insurance market. But with respect to some of the Medicare plans that are offered to our retirees, it would stand to reason that, significant shifts at the federal level could have trickle-down impact on Medicare-type plans.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Any other questions on Mr. Diggins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Feeney. Could you talk about overtime, in respect to APD and AFD and the factors that are leading to the amount of OT that we're seeing?
So, thank you, Mr. Diggins. For fiscal year '26, we are not necessarily projecting any differences in overtime within either of those respective budgets, though I would hope we are about to undergo our next round of hiring patrol officers at APD to fill our 6 remaining vacancies, and that process is underway. So it would stand to reason that once fully staffed or close to fully staffed in the police department, that would help curtail potential overtime costs.
Thank you. And then the net effect on the budget would be, when we fill those positions, would it be net positive with respect to the budget, or neutral, or?
I'll be honest, Mr. Diggins, that's a bit complex because it really depends on exactly who it is that is taking and fulfilling the overtimes. But, would you agree that it's roughly neutral in many ways. Where we experience cost savings is on the overhead for those employees, like indirect costs.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay.
Next slide, please.
So we'll just give some highlights on some of the sort of the details of the budget. As noted earlier, the total expenditure growth is 5.61% on the bottom line. 3.25% of that is the town growth, and then 5.6% is sort of the blended number for the schools. Once you take into account the additional override commitment, that number jumps to 7.37%. And pensions and insurance, as I noted, are up 8.8% blended together.
And then within the town's 3.25% expenditure growth cap, if you've reviewed at least even the town manager's budget message at the front of your budget book, it will note that by and large, most of those funds went to increasing budgets associated with what we're projecting to be our costs associated with our new curbside collection contract for trash and recycling. We have executed at least one contract for disposal, and we are seeing our disposal rates per ton. This is at the site in North Andover. Our per ton disposal cost has gone up 10% from last year, and we will, for the first year ever in fiscal year '26, be on the hook, so to say, for paying a per ton fee for processing our single stream recyclables at a materials recovery facility in the area. So that is something we've been insulated from due to having a favorable contract for the past 3 years. It is and has been customary for municipalities to be paying those costs. So we are projecting for that to be at least a $250,000 increase, if not more. And that is going to depend not only on the tonnage of recycling collected curbside or via dumpster in Arlington, but also what the blended commodity value of those recyclables are. We end up paying a net rate. So you pay a top line fee of here's how much it takes to process per ton, but then the materials recovery facility gets to maintain all of those recyclables. Clean cardboard still has a good amount of value, as do a few other things, and then there's certainly a couple other recyclable items where it frankly just costs even more money to dispose of them than they would just standard solid waste. So those will be cost drivers, and of course we're still waiting to see. A big part of these contracts is associated with labor rates. Our current published rates for prevailing wages, which apply to this program, were those that were effective on July 1st, 2023. So the prevailing wage program has not yet published new prevailing wages based on the Teamsters Local 25 contracts. We're awaiting those to be published, but we've been modeling certain projections for what we think the impact could be if the prevailing wage increased by $3 an hour or $5 an hour to see where we may land with respect to that contract. And, big picture, we're still talking to a few vendors, but at this point, I can report that the town is going to need to move forward with a curbside collection program that involves curbside toters. I know that will be good news to some, but perhaps not great news to others, because it does mean that there will be stricter limits on the amount of waste that gets placed curbside for collection in the toters that the town ultimately provides. If we were to try to continue with our current program as designed, which really has pretty high trash limits, and you can put it out in any receptacle or bags, that requires manual collection. So that is a truck with one driver and at least 2 laborer helpers on the back. Once you go to automated, you're likely down to 1 driver, so it cuts the labor cost of your contract by almost 2/3. If we were to stick with our current program, it would send us over budget by potentially $3 million. So it really wasn't an option to continue business as usual. And to be frank, I don't expect many waste haulers will continue to offer that type of service for many more years, given the tight labor market and the number of injuries associated with those rear load trucks and people getting on and off them all day out in traffic, in streets. I think that has been a significant cost driver for private industry. So most are moving to what we call automation or containerization. So beyond that, the next areas where we are making targeted investments is in information technology. For the second year in a row, we're making investments that will increase or better our cybersecurity posture. In the assessor's office, we are funding just over approximately $62,500 annually to assist with our data collection and evaluation efforts. So just over $52,000 of that will fund roughly 1,500 annual property inspections. As you may recall, we used to fund via warrant article once every 5 years, roughly $250,000 to try to cram all of those inspections into 1 year. We will now be breaking that up and doing them in a consistent cyclical fashion year over year in accordance with recommendations offered to us by the Bureau of Local Assessment as a best practice. I think it could benefit the town in the long run as well. If you are inspecting properties annually, you can capture new growth and improvements at those properties prior to your 5-year cycle, and then that growth can obviously compound year over year. And then a smaller portion, just over $5,000, to have a consultant assist us with our commercial income and expense evaluation. So commercial landlords have to file paperwork annually with the assessor's office. And this will enable us to seek third-party assistance with evaluating some of those income and expense forms we get to ensure that we are accurately assessing commercial and industrial property. In the police department, you'll note here, BWC stands for body-worn cameras. So there's an increase in our expenditure line associated with what we hope to be a go-live in fiscal year 26 of our body-worn camera program. And the increase there is associated with the third-party vendor from whom we have already received the body-worn cameras, but would be providing the online ongoing support, storage, access to those files, as well as a nominal increase for the new Comfort Dog program. You may have seen on social media or elsewhere, Officer Roger has been deployed with the Arlington Police Department, and with that carries some very reasonable costs associated with training, care, and other associated incidentals for having an additional K-9 within the police department. There is an increase in the facilities department for utility costs. Again, we expect our transmission rates to increase year over year as they do through Eversource. I am pleased that on the supply side of the equation, we did execute some futures contracts last year. So our electricity supply cost went down in December of 2024, and it will in fact go down again in December of 2025 based on our planning ahead and timing the market right with the assistance of a consultant. But the transmission costs continue to go up. And then some similar increases for in facilities and public works with respect to increased material costs in public works. That is especially so in motor equipment repair, automotive replacement parts, tires. All those things have gone up astronomically in the past few years, and we were taking the opportunity this year to try to do some catch up with some over expenditure. On the personnel side of the equation, there is some modest changes. The most noteworthy to report is the addition of a 1 FTE security analyst in the IT department. I would foresee that individual helping to oversee a number of the cybersecurity platforms that we've been investing in the current fiscal year, as well as to help with the further rollout of multi-factor authentication and incident reporting and investigation. That position within the town's budget is being funded at the 50% level, and with the Arlington Public Schools budget picking up the other 50% of that position, because many of the tools and platforms we have sit atop the entire network, which is shared across the organization. And then I'll turn it over to Alex to talk about budget reductions briefly.
Sure. We were able to find some savings in a number of departments. Some highlights include offboarding, just under $29,000 worth of annualized software costs. These are for systems that are no longer necessary, have already been replaced, or are planned to be replaced by something else coming online. So this is like the net reduction. DPW's natural gas line going down by $7,000. That just felt like it was a little over budgeted. We worked with Mr. Rademacher on that. Similarly, a $30,000 reduction in the cemetery contracted services line. The last couple years, the actual spend has been lower than what was budgeted, and we determined that we were able to find a savings there. Also, there's a 1.23 reduction in ARPA-funded positions as the sort of allowable use for ARPA starts to wind down. We found it necessary to reduce by these positions, which were grant-funded. And so it's a net of 1.23 FTEs going off the books there. Next slide, please.
And this is just a tabular format of those requests that were funded and at what level. We'll note, of course, the version in our office, what we call the master of this, is a much, much longer version of a whole slew of requests that were not funded this year. Again, because, $750,000 went to trash and recycling. There wasn't room to consider many other new expenditures or salary increases. This table lists a number of things. We talked about one that may be of note to this board on the IT budget. You'll see a parenthetical reference to something called One Meeting. So Novus Agenda, which this board and a number of other boards make use of, has been sunset. So we will be onboarding the new replacement product for Novus Agenda. Happy to report that will allow us to make that platform available to every single board, committee, and commission, and now have one database that will contain all of our agendas and minutes, instead of having some live in Novus and some live in just baseline folders under certain particular committees and commissions. So I'm very excited about that. It's requiring a lot of document management on the back end. I'm glad I'm not doing that personally, because it requires tedious nomenclature on the file names to make sure that they can be appropriately searched and harvested, but that vendor will be helping us with that migration of the information, and still looking to report back on exactly what our go-live date would be. One other thing of note, in the planning department, you'll see something called offset replacement. So the environmental planner is a full-time position currently occupied by David Borgen in the Department of Planning and Community Development. That position has historically been offset by a 10% amount to the Conservation Commission's sort of permit fees line. As that has been implemented on the full-time position over, it's now been a handful of years, that balance in the account has been steadily declining, and expenses are now exceeding revenues. So given the forecasted potential to exhaust those fees, we thought it was an appropriate time to fully onboard that particular position into the general fund. At the same time, the Conservation Commission and David Morgan had submitted a request for a part-time conservation administrator to help with some additional increased workload associated with, some permit activity and some enforcement actions that needed to take place. So the hope is that in holding harmless their existing account from this particular offset, that they will be able to dedicate the resources that the revenue they are receiving to enhanced sort of field observations, site visits, and enforcement actions with those funds. And then, by and large, the remainder of the list is either contractual increases or related to things we touched upon briefly.
Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you. Since we have the screen up, thank you for this. One very eye-catching figure is the little over $500,000 increase in yard waste disposal, which exceeds, from the look of it, the combined curbside collection and rubbish disposal. I wonder if you could comment on what's driving that increase, and if this will be with a level services for the frequency and capacity of yard waste, or will there be any changes with that?
Sure. So you have a good eye, Mr. Helmuth. So that is largely seeing the largest increase because as a part of our new contract and the procurement that we did, yard waste is going to be its separate line. As it exists now, our manual collection methods allow the same truck and same method to collect yard waste as curbside trash and recycling, but now yard waste will continue to be a manual collection method with rear load trucks, and that is bid as a separate line. And previously, our budget had yard waste budgeted only for disposal. So we only paid for tipping at the far end, but our new yard waste budget now needs to cover both collection and disposal. So that's why you see the largest increase in that line, because it had collection at the curbside had previously been incorporated into the trash and recycling contract. To your latter point about will we see the same level of yard waste collection moving forward, at this point I don't have specifics, but I can confidently state that, what I would call the municipal gold standard of 3-season or largely 40-week yard waste collection is a thing of the past with respect to how much manual collection methods cost, and we're still trying to right-size what the best program for Arlington would look like to ensure that our residents don't feel like that is a significant reduction in services. So we're looking at those weeks where, during the height of the summer, where perhaps you may not need weekly collection, could you get, bi-weekly collection? And what can we do as a municipality should there be a need in an off week to set up a site where we could have something that serves as a safety valve, if you will, to providing for additional yard waste collection. So I can't yet quote a number of weeks, but that is an area where we will need to make concessions as a community to, live within our expenditure growth cap, but still essentially hold harmless to the extent possible curbside collection of trash and recycling as priority services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you. And then just a brief note, as this is sort of, the guiding light as we prepare the budget each year in our override environment, is that this budget firmly maintains all of the commitments that this board made to the voters for the special election that took place in November of 2023. So it maintains the expenditure percentage growth caps as committed. It also phases in the funding for Arlington Public Schools for implementation of the strategic plan as agreed to. And it does the work of maintaining strong financial reserves at least 5% for the duration of the plan. I'm happy to report that those, our strong financial reserves and our strong fiscal year-end closing positions in both 23 and 24 have again made us look favorable to credit rating agencies in advance of our upcoming bond issuance, which will be before the board later in February.
Excellent. Right, so, before us here is the, sort of the latest long-range plan. This really acts as sort of the guiding light for the, for our outlook and our forecast, and it tells us where we think we're gonna be down the road. You'll note, our FY '26 budget, which is the $230 million figure in the bottom line. We're facing a projected sizable deficit of over $13 million in FY '27, and that number grows into the future. With that said, with the release of the governor's budget, if we plug those numbers in here, that number would drop, below 13 million, and each out year would be impacted by that as well, and so that's how this plan works. But we are looking at a sizable red number starting in FY '27. Any final thoughts we want to give here, Jim?
And I would say, just while we're on this slide, the one thing across the bottom is projected school enrollment growth. That is something that the school department is committed to looking at again so that they can revise their projections. That is something that, has proved challenging to come at with a fine point, but there's a number of different methodologies for doing so, and the school department has informed us that they're looking at, again, revising those numbers because that does have a significant impact in the out years. So we hope that as soon as we receive any updated projections, we would publish an updated version of this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. And before I open it up to questions, I just want to thank you for the comprehensive presentation. You sent us the budget book, which is 230 pages long and a lot more detail and very informative in terms of your cover letter within that budget book. But just with the long-range plan, Ms. Mara, if you could put that back up again, the long-range plan, and we're dealing in an environment where on the town side, you're increasing 3.25% per year, but we've heard about the challenges that you see, and some of them unforeseen at the beginning of this budgeting period, where you knew trash removal was going to go up. You didn't know how much it was going to go up, and it's both the removal and it's both the incinerator up in North Andover. We have challenges with yard waste, and you also saw a number of investments that needed to be made in the IT function, and because of the incident that had come up, and it's money that you have to spend. But within that 3.25%, I think this is further evidence that the town's money is being spent wisely. It's a real challenge, and we appreciate everything you're doing to try to fit all of the needs into the budget document. And final thing I'd say just about the unpredictability, and what you see on the screen there is the 5-year plan. And even in Mr. Feeney's cover letter, he said the deficit's going to change in the future. We don't know how much it's going to change. Hopefully it goes down because of conservative revenue estimates. But just on the school side, when we did the 5-year plan at the time of the override, the best estimate was that the school enrollment was going to increase by 3 students and increase by over 100. Now that's over $1 million, and that's the formula that as students there is a per pupil amount that is agreed to, whether it goes up or down during the cycle. It went up, and it was a number that wasn't known until October. You didn't know until maybe the 3rd or 4th week in October this year. And so again, it just shows you everything that the difficulties that we have, and we have to go out for overrides at various times. There'll be another request over the next few years. Hopefully, maybe we get another year out of it. Maybe not. We don't know yet. But I think this demonstrates, between reading this and reading the budget, the challenges there are in running municipal government. I thank you both and your team for everything that you're doing to try to bring us in on budget, which we will be for fiscal '26. So with that, I'll turn to questions, comments. Mr. Diggins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So backing up to the assessors, new way of doing assessments. So if I understand correctly, every 5 years, we would look at everything, right? And so now we're going to look at 1,500 properties per year. So then we have fewer than 7,500 properties that we look at?
It's an additional 1,500. I don't have the exact, but it's around, I think around 9,000 parcels total.
Okay, so then probably then it's every, okay, so I was just making sure, because if it's more, then we're not going to be assessing every 5 years, and so we might, I was trying to understand the savings, because I understand the rationale behind it, but it only works if the math works, means I just wanted to make sure the math works, okay.
So what I would say is that's roughly 1,500 inspections. Not every property inspection carries the same cost. Some are far more complicated than others.
Gotcha. Another thing is, we knew that when we hired the DEI positions, through ARPA, that they were gonna have a limited lifespan. And I knew at the time it was gonna be hard to let that go, and so, it isn't that, we are diminishing our commitment to DEI, that was programmed in, but even when we had that position, I thought we needed more of it, because she did community outreach, which to me, is really community building, which is what we really need, because that's how we get resilience, and I could still use a lot of help, getting the Young Arlington Collaborative off the ground, and working with town meeting members, to get more residents involved with their town meeting members is something we could still use a whole lot of. And so we put people focus on the DEI part of it, but what we were really focused on was creating, community in that sense of belonging. And so if there is any way at all that we can save that position or bring it back, I would be in total favor of doing that, so I just put that out there. And another thing I'll add too is that we as a board, we tried to get ahead of the curve, with respect to long-range planning, and there was this snafu, that cost us, we weren't able to do, we weren't able to bring in 7 million when we wanted to, and you mentioned that. And so the 13 million would have been less, had there not been that snafu. So it's not that we weren't prudent. There was just a clerical error. That won't happen again. But we were doing our best, to not have such a big number appear, what it does. And I think that tells the public, that we shouldn't wait until the very last minute, to do these overrides, because there is compounding in both directions, and so if we can get ahead of the curve, we're better off, and we can maybe smooth things out a bit. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Mr. Hurd?
Thank you. That was a very detailed presentation. It's much more detailed than I anticipated when I saw the slides. But I had a number of questions. They were all answered during the presentation. So I just want to thank the work that you both do, and Julie and Lauren, and everyone that puts their fingers on our budgets. Whenever we have a budget presentation, I am comforted that there are many people in town that know much more about me than me about town finance, and I trust the experts. And it's always just, as we look at the numbers, it's comforting as a resident to know, and a member of this board, that we have expertise and people that are looking out for our best interests, and we always come in with favorable reviews of the budget process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Mrs. Mahan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have had one quick question. Now I have two quick questions, just to follow up on one of Mr. Diggins' points. under diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, where we are losing that opera position, which we knew. But we also wanted to see what we could do going forward. But we will still have a DEI director, is that correct, Jillian Harvey's position?
That is correct, Mrs. Mahan. So there will still be a DEI director and an ADA coordinator. The position that you see projected to not be funded in fiscal year '26 was chosen because the person who currently holds that position, Teresa Marzilli, had given advance notice that she was going to be, in fact, moving out of state. So we plan to likely not be able to fill that position in that short period of time that would remain with ARPA funding once it was vacant. So it was going to be very time limited at that point.
Okay. In taking the points that Mr. Diggins has made, as well as my other colleagues, and I've had individual conversations with the manager, I think moving forward, it's for us to really further redefine the DEI position, and then that will give us, moving forward, what services or people we need to augment it. And I think with the new hire, and I'm not even sure where we are with that, and I don't want to get bogged down in that, but I think that, and I've said this to you one-on-one, that if that person, if she or he could refocus to Arlington and programs like what Mr. Diggins cited and things that I've spoken about in terms of Menotomy Manor and other places, I think we all know the need is there, but I think that outreach, that's where that should go. I was a little bit frustrated, and we had spoken about this before, that it seemed to me our DEI position was more of a statewide DEI position for all the cities and towns in Arlington, and that's just how it happened, and it was a different town manager that was overseeing it. So I would like to see when that person comes in, he or she, the tie-in to the programs that we've spoken about. So so that was just taking a plug. But I wanted to make clear to people that we're not Xing out DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that department, that director. That is still there. The second question I had was on the security analyst, and it's more of a procedural question moving forward, if it's what I think it is. I understand it's about 87,000, and we're sharing it 50-50 with the school department. Are we doing that just salary only, or the total cost of that position?
In terms of the cost share?
Yes.
Okay, so that the offset in the town's budget would be for salary only, and then the sort of what I'll call the indirect costs associated with that employee, all indirect costs are bundled into the insurance and pension budget for both town and school employees. So it is just the salary portion that is split. That cost will be split 50-50 between the two operating budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I think that concludes it. Just for our benefit, when are you presenting the budget to Finance Committee?
This time Wednesday.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I
And will
didn't
this
ask her-
be back on the agenda again, so we can move receipt or move endorsement, or is tonight the last night?
I think we should move receipt tonight, but we certainly can come back if
I'd like to
there are
move
changes.
receipt then.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Have a second?
Second.
Okay, so a motion to receive the town manager's budget presentation by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Okay. Items 3 and 4, and I apologize we had a CDBG hearing scheduled for 7:45, and one thing that we're not delivering tonight is a timely meeting, so I apologize for that. We'll get through this as quickly as we can get to that. We have a few things ahead of it. I will move the consent agenda till after the CDBG presentation, but I'd like to move on to item 3, which is a proclamation to name October 17th Spreadsheet Day in the town of Arlington. I'm not going to read the full proclamation. It is a request that had come into us. I don't know if the proponent is here. No, what I was going to suggest, the board has seen it. I think we should do more prior to October 17th, later in the year. It's regarding VisiCalc, which was the first ever spreadsheet application. So I'll look for motions from board members. Mr. Chair. Mr. Helmuth.
Happy to move approval, and I'll just note the appropriateness of us, of recognizing the invention of the spreadsheet here, given the presentation we just had, which that process and so much other relies intensively on spreadsheets. So there's a certain amount of pride there, and I was glad to learn this.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth.
I'll
Mr. Hurd?
second and just say when I first glanced at the agenda tonight, spreadsheet dated, it was a little odd amongst the other work that we had, but as I got to read the proclamation, it was very interesting and certainly a well-used application I use every day at work, so.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Any other comments? Okay, so on a motion by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Hurd, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that proclamation is approved. Item number 3 is a proclamation to declare February 2nd, or proclaim February 2nd, 2025, Samuel Whittemore Day in the town of Arlington. Again, we have the proclamation in our agenda materials. Just one administrative issue on the proclamation. Samuel Whittemore, February 2nd is the anniversary of his death in 1793. So we have a whereas there that lived for many years and passed away on April 2nd. That's February 2nd, 1793. So with that, I'll look to the board members for Mrs. Mahan.
Move approval.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
All right, so a motion for approval by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. I am going to skip the consent agenda for now and move on to appointments, which is item 12, Arlington Committee on Tourism and Economic Development, Simon Prayet, for a term to expire January 31st, 2028. I believe he's with us by Zoom. Mr. Hurd?
Did we skip the consent agenda or did
I'm going to do that after.
I? Oh, okay, sorry.
Good evening. Hopefully I said that correctly. Is Prayet the proper pronunciation?
Very close,
Okay,
thank you.
apologize. Okay, thank you for joining us and for your interest in joining the Committee on Tourism and Economic Development. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested.
Sure. So as I said, my name is Simon. I've been a resident of Arlington for 9 years with my family. For the last 20 years, I've been in startup mode. I've founded multiple companies, mostly in software and with a particular focus in marketing. So for over 10 years, I ran a company that specialized in social media marketing, using different channels like email and working with different types of small businesses. I've also, since the COVID pandemic, worked with a number of local businesses on kind of revamping their tech stack so that it's more modern and addressable to the community. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. So when I saw an opening in this committee, I thought it's an awesome way to give back with a lot of things that are happening in Arlington right now, that I feel that I can be of assistance, whether it's on marketing, online, which is kind of my specialty, or working directly with small businesses just to help them out with like different workshops or different skills that can help them flourish in the community.
Thank you. I'll turn to board members. Mr. Hurd.
Thank you for your willingness to serve on ATED. It's, like I always say, it's a very interesting committee to serve on. It's a good group. We focus both on the tourism and economic development aspects, and they often go hand in hand, but not always. But this
Right.
particular committee, we're doing a lot of work. So the tail end before the 2025 celebration, but there's still a fair amount of work to do. And so that particular event has taken up a lot of time, but there is a whole lot that ATED does in addition to that, and it really is an interesting committee to serve on. So again, thank you for your willingness to serve and move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Mr. Diggins?
I'll second that, and I can tell that you're going to bring creativity, to your service, and so I look forward to seeing what you do with that committee, and as a result, benefit the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay, I believe we have a motion for appointment by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, item 13 is an appointment to the LGBTQIA plus Rainbow Commission, Michaela Kirby, for a term to expire January 31st, 2026, coming up rather quickly. Dr. Kirby? Yep, if you want to come right up. Sure.
Do you have a spreadsheet? No, I'm only kidding.
No, I do not. I can make you a very creative one, though.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And again, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving on the commission.
Sure. So I've been living in Arlington 19 years, and I've been involved in the LGBTQIA community since like the 1970s, so I have quite a historic sense of it. And 2 years ago, I left my full-time teaching position at Lesley University, where I had been very involved also with issues around sexuality. And so when I was in my new phase of life, I was wanting to become involved in things. So I joined the Welcoming Congregation Committee at First Parish, which is a committee that really focuses on creating an environment that's welcoming to the LGBTQIA community. So, and through my work, we, co-sponsor, we host 2 of the events by the committee, Trans Day of Visibility and Trans Day of Remembrance. And I actually was really impressed by what the commission was doing and was intrigued to hear more about it and started to learn about it. And I've really wanted to kind of put down some more roots in Arlington. I kind of miss having a whole college community around me. So I'm looking for a place to really establish and join and make community. So I'm excited to be able to do that and to really think about how we do that in Arlington. So that's kind of
Great.
what's brought me here.
Thank you for your interest. Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Kirby, for your willingness to serve and for your proud history of doing that. This has been a tough week for a lot of us
Oh, yeah.
who are, as I am, a member of the queer community, and for those who love them. And we know that we have a rough 4 years ahead of us and a lot of fear. But just yesterday, I had the pleasure of attending an event that was sponsored by the Rainbow Commission and by the Human Rights Commission, where people just came together. Mm-hmm. We're just with each other, and I think we reminded ourselves that we need to make room for being with one another, for community, for joy in the middle of that. And I think that you're joining at a really important time, so that those of us, regardless of what community we identify with, know that we want Arlington to be a place where everyone is welcome. Mm-hmm. And I'm delighted that you'll be joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Diggins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm the board's liaison to the Rainbow Commission, and sometimes I feel like Adam Levine, from The Voice, where he's just like, everything is incredible, and everyone that comes on is just like the best person he's seen, and it's just so amazing. But really, reading your list of publications, it's like, wow. Just wow, and the sand play, I hadn't heard of that, but certainly seems very interesting. So really looking forward to working with you on the commission and seeing what you can just bring to the town with your positive take, on sexuality and the creative ways that you can provide therapy. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay.
That was a second.
Yeah, I already wrote you down as a second. Okay, so on a motion for approval for the appointment by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Diggins, all in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Great.
Great. Congratulations, and thank you again.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your impressive academic career. You're at Leslie for quite a while, and it was an impressive resume.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm just
really.
looking forward to bringing my energy here.
Great.
I need a playground.
You'll have one.
Take some sand.
Okay, next we will move on to open forum. Except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented for consideration of the board shall neither be acted upon nor a decision made the night of the presentation in accordance with the policy under which the open forum was established. It should be noted that there is a 3-minute time limit to present a concern or request. Is there anybody in the chambers who wishes to be heard on open forum? Okay, anybody on Zoom?
Seeing a few hands raised.
Okay.
I'm promoting the first person.
Sure. Yeah, and as people being promoted, once they are promoted on Zoom, if you could identify yourself, and again, I just repeat that we do have a 3-minute time limit for each individual speaker. Good evening. Can't see who this is, but
Catherine Farrell.
Catherine Farrell, if you just want to unmute your mic, you're able to speak at this time.
Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
I didn't think I was going to go first. We have a bunch of folks here that are going to talk about the Broadway Coalition and what we sent to the Select Board. Anyway, my colleagues are here too. I'll be very brief, and thank you. I live at 76 Park Street, 2 blocks away from Broadway, and I use Broadway Street often, both for walking and for driving. And I particularly noticed the difficulty for pedestrians to safely cross Broadway. I'll focus on 2 intersections I use. One is Everett Street and the other is Oxford Street. These intersections are frequently used by children and parents on their way to and from Thompson School, as well as Arlington Eats, a daycare center, and Dunkin' Donuts. The crosswalk's paint is barely visible. There are no flashing lights, only 1 walk light and 1 yield to pedestrian sign. We need repainting, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, raised crosswalks, curb extensions, and median islands. All of these improvements are noted on our Broadway streetscape proposal that we submitted to you, and the problems I noted are present at other crosswalks on Broadway. I'm also a bike rider. However, I do not feel safe using Broadway. We need separated bike lanes. So thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I hope you'll talk to my 2 other colleagues. My 3 other colleagues are going to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, it just takes a second.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Lotowski. I live at 76 Oxford Street in East Arlington. I'm also here tonight to talk about Broadway. The street plays multiple roles in our neighborhood. It's one of the entry points into Arlington. It's a key arterial through East Arlington, and it's part of a neighborhood where people live, go to school, catch the bus, and visit the local businesses. And as Catherine spoke to, it's despite its importance, it's really very unsafe with few crosswalks, no bike lanes, and crumbling and uneven sidewalks. So we have had past planning efforts. It's listed in the Connect Arlington plan. There was a Broadway corridor design competition a couple of years ago, and our neighbors in Somerville are conducting their reconstruction project, which is scheduled to begin construction in late 2025 or early 2026. So we do really want to thank the town of Arlington for acting on our request to remove the special speed limits on Broadway. So now it's 25 miles per hour like the rest of the town. We also want to congratulate the town and our planning department for winning this $1.1 million grant for the long-term redesign as a complete street. The Broadway Neighbors Coalition and Eels wrote letters in support of this, and we're really looking forward to participating in the public process. However, that project has a really long timeline, and we only have design funding, not funding for construction at this point. So we really can't live with these unsafe conditions for another 5, 10, maybe 15 years. There's already a lot of people who walk, bike, and take the bus in this area. New housing development like the HCA's project at 10 Sunnyside will bring even more people there. And we're really worried that a death like that, the tragic death of Mr. Kuklantz in the Heights, could happen right here as well. So we need to take some immediate action while we're working on this long-term plan. We should take advantage of the repaving effort that's going on after the water main work and do some short-term improvements that could have a really meaningful improvement in people's safety in the short term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Latowski.
I'm promoting the next person.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Select Board. My name is Vincent Baudouin. I live at 70 Silk Street. And as Jennifer mentioned, there's been a lot of really good planning process and energy that's gone into considering a future for Broadway. And we're trying to carry that torch. A couple of years ago, we founded the Broadway Neighbors Coalition as a neighborhood group centered on all of the concerns that we had been hearing. And we held in the spring of 2023 a community meeting to listen to our neighbors, to hear what they were concerned about and to hear their ideas. We got a lot of good ones, good ideas. We started to put Post-it notes on a map, and we ended up creating through a series of work sessions, conceptual design for short-term improvements that could be made to the street. So we know that there's a long-term design that can happen, but we do believe that there are a lot of elements that could be put into place quickly without a lot of cost. That would include separated bike lanes in both directions. That would include adding crosswalks at certain well-used intersections and improving the crosswalks that are already there. We also looked a little bit more closely at one section of the street, which is the eastern portion by the cemetery and close to the Somerville line. And we felt that in particular, that section had very little need for parking. There is a great opportunity there to tie into future work that is going to be happening on the Somerville side of Broadway and to the Route 16 Broadway intersection. And we could make a big improvement and kind of lessen the drag strip feeling that that currently has as drivers come into Arlington at a high rate of speed. I do just want to say how important I think it is to embrace the quick build model. We know that resources are limited, and implementing things using some paint, using some posts is a great way to test them out. And I believe that the transportation planner has thinks that we might be able to use the future consultant for the redesign to do some of these strategies. And I do hope that we get a chance to work more with the town manager and with the transportation planner to really contribute to this effort. We're not looking to just complain, we really want to add. So I do hope you'll take a few minutes to take a look at our letter, to take a look at the design proposals we've put together. They're friendly, they're easy to read, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And one more.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ratnakar Velanki, and I live at 21 Adams Street in East Arlington. And Adams Street is one of the streets that runs from Mass Ave, that runs between Mass Ave and Broadway. So for us, Broadway is more than a thoroughfare. It's one of the main arteries through which a lot of our daily lives flow through. Just to give you an example of what my day in the life looks like, right? I take Broadway to walk my son every morning to Thompson School. I pick him up from a after school childcare center, which is also on Broadway, and walk him back. The nearest grocery store for most of East Arlington is Stop and Shop, right, which is on Arlington Somerville line. To get there, we have to take Broadway. mostly walk or bike there. Leahy Primary Clinic, which serves as a primary care center for a lot of folks here in East Arlington, as well as some members of my family, is on Broadway. We walk there. So I'm just giving you examples of how Broadway is more than just a thoroughfare. It's a main artery through which a lot of our daily lives run, right? From a work perspective, I walk on Broadway to take 87 or bike to get to Davis Square, from where I take the Somerville Community Path, or sometimes walk towards West Medford, for which I also have to take Broadway. And I'm not even getting to the bakers and the barbers and several other things in our daily life that we use Broadway for. Just wanted to give an example of how important that is for us. Not to mention, in general, we have Thompson School, Leslie Ellis School, and several daycare centers as well, either on or off Broadway, right? Despite having all these conveniences in a very quote-unquote walkable neighborhood, Broadway is still very car-centric. And in some places, it's very outright hostile to bikers and pedestrians. Crosswalks are unsafe. I would like to especially call out that triangle junction where Broadway, Warren Street, and River Street meet, where it's outright inaccessible to pedestrians and bikers. Just to give you an example, you cannot walk on the left side of Broadway while going towards Somerville in that junction. There's just no way to cross the junction, right? You always have to keep on the right side of Broadway, while Thompson School is actually on the left, right? So you have to take a very weird path to even get there, especially for kids. I think where I'm getting to is that, I'd like to begin with saying thank you to the board for reducing the speed limit. I think that's a good starting point, but I think that's a marginal step towards safety. A lot needs to be done. And in order to get there, I fully support the community design proposal that Broadway Neighbors Coalition put together that addresses near-term improvements to alleviate a lot of the urgent concerns we have on Broadway, because the full redesign is several and many years away, right? So that's where I'd like to leave, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
Nope, that's all.
Okay, that concludes open forum, and feels like Central Time tonight. We're at 7:45. We're now moving on to 7:45 Central. Traffic rules and orders and other business. Item 14 is the CDBG performance update for program year 2024-2025. We're also going to be hearing item 15, which is the CDBG request for fiscal 26 funding. Joining us this evening is Mayor Musinski, our Community Development Block Grant Administrator. Thank you for joining us, and we apologize for the delay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. I'm Mayor Musinski, Community Development Block Grant Administrator with the Department of Planning and Community Development. As Mr. Chair said, we have two agenda items to review with the board this evening. First, I'll present a brief overview of the CDBG program, program year 50, mid-year report for the board's endorsement, and a summary of the applications for the upcoming program year. Then program year 51 applicants will have the opportunity to present an overview of their proposed programs and activities. So funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG, awards annual grants on a formula basis to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities. Funding is intended to carry out a wide range of activities that principally benefit households of low to moderate income, and the community's priorities and goals are used to create a 5-year consolidated plan which guides the town's allocation of funds to eligible programs and activities. Over $1 million has been allocated to affordable housing, public parks, infrastructure, and public service activities this year. Some of the highlights from the mid-year report include from our affordable housing projects. The Housing Corporation of Arlington is using grant funds for a capital improvement projects within their affordable housing portfolio. HCA's program year 50 project locations have been identified and are moving forward. HCA's projects completed so far this year include a staircase repairs on Medford Street and masonry work on Warren Street. Arlington Housing Authority has undertaken large capital improvement projects at the Hauser Building at Drake Village, The program year 48 roof replacement project was completed in April. And the program year 49 building exhaust fan project is underway and expected to be completed by this June. Caritas Communities program year 48 improvements to the kitchen and 7 bathrooms on Russell Street were completed in May 2024. And their program 50 capital improvement projects are out to bid and expected to be completed at the end of July. From our public service activities, public service programming provides essential health, recreation, employment, training, after-school, and transportation services. CDBG public service goals are measured by the number of low to moderate income participants who benefited from the program. At mid-year, just over 1,200 Arlington residents have benefited from CDBG funding public service activities. This represents 70% of the collective goal for public services for program year 50. All public service activities are on track to accomplish their goals by the end of the program year. Notably, the Boys and Girls Club Scholarship Program, Operation Success, and Fidelity House's Menominee Manor Outreach Program have all exceeded their goals for the year. Arlington Eats and Fidelity House's Jobs Program have hit their goals for the year, and the Council on Aging's Transportation Program has achieved 50% of their goal by mid-year. For our public facilities and improvements projects, a landscape architect firm has been hired and started a design process for the Minuteman Bikeway tree planting project. The Department of Public Works curb ramp installations project will resume in the spring. The Hauser Building ADA improvements to paved surfaces project and the lower Millbrook flood resilience design project and the program year 49 Robbins Library ADA accessible restroom project are all in the bidding phase. The program year 49 Veterans Memorial Park redesign project is underway. A request was submitted to use awarded CDBG funds for ADA improvements during construction phase instead of the design phase of this project. As there is no change to the funding amount, this request will be reviewed by the CDBG subcommittee this week. And then finally, for planning and administration, the Department of Planning and Community Development manages a number of CDBG funded projects, and the Planning Department is currently working to update the town's master plan. This year's long-range planning funds are earmarked for this update. So that concludes the highlights from the mid-year report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Do you want a motion? to
Yeah, I
receive
think we
that?
should, yeah.
So, move receipt?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion to receive the report by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you. All right, with no questions about the current CDBG activities, we'll move on to the second CDBG agenda item, program year 51 overview of the funding requests. At this time, Arlington has not received its final CDBG funding from HUD. In recent years, Arlington has received an entitlement grant of just over $1 million. We plan to receive the grant again of this size again for program year 51. We estimate that the program income for the upcoming year will roughly be $5,000. Program income funds have been trending downward as there are only 5 remaining Arlington home rehab loans generating interest. Grant awards will be budgeted accordingly. So for program year 51, we received 21 applications with a funding request just under $1.4 million. We received new applications for public services, public facilities and improvements, and economic development projects this year. The full application portfolio is included with tonight's materials for review. I do have to note I accidentally missed the application for recreation, so I apologize, and I'll have that corrected first thing in the morning, and of course for the CDBG subcommittee. So the next step in the application process is for the CDBG subcommittee to draft a budget recommendation, which will be presented to the select board for endorsement. Again, I want to thank you for your time, and I'd like to request that the CDBG program year 51 applicants be invited to share a brief overview of their proposals.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Mizuki. Before we bring up the applicants, any questions or comments? Okay. Yep.
Thank
Go
you.
right ahead with that now. And I want to acknowledge the 2 members of the subcommittee on the board, Mrs. Mahan and Mr. Hurd, who've been our CDBG subcommittee designees. All right, first we'll start in the chambers, if there's any applicants that wish to be heard. Yep, come on. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Chulile, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lamplight Women's Literacy. We are an Arlington-based nonprofit organization that's been in operation for about 3 years now. The mission of our organization is to partner with individuals with limited incomes, encouraging them to envision ambitious careers for themselves, and then supporting those goals through tailored educational programs. So the two main programs through which we are achieving that mission right now, the first is a healthcare careers pathway program where we support certified nursing assistants in their development of the college-ready skills needed for them to successfully achieve nursing school admissions. And then the second program is our English for Speakers of Other Languages program, and that is the program for which we are requesting $7,000 toward the staff salaries of that program. To give you a little bit more details about that, our program operates 4 nights a week. Here in Arlington, we are very grateful to our generous partnership with both Arlington Housing Authority and Arlington Eats, where we operate our classes 2 nights a week each, 2 nights at Arlington Eats on Tuesday, Thursday, and then 2 nights at Menominee Manors Life and Skills Center on Monday and Wednesday evenings. We offer 3 levels of English language courses, low beginner, high beginner, and intermediate. So altogether that makes for a comprehensive 3-year curriculum that students can partake in part or whole. Our students are low-income individuals who are working or actively seeking employment. Many of them are employed in industries such as childcare, cleaning, food service, food delivery. Many of them have school-age children in their households, and not all, but the majority of, certainly first eligibility goes to Arlington residents, and so the majority of our students are Arlington residents. In addition to English classes, we also provide sort of wraparound supports that connect our students to various social services in the town, as well as career-oriented services such as resume writing, interview practicing, connections to job openings. Just last week, we have a student who we supported in order to be able to, she has an upcoming interview with the Arlington school system and food service. And so, and so these are just some of the ways that we serve our students. Lastly, I just want to say that I believe our program is an excellent investment in the goals that the town is trying to achieve. Our program makes this town viable and supportive of people with low incomes. It helps to also make it a welcoming, supportive place for people of, ethnically, linguistically, and racially diverse individuals. It helps support the needs of local businesses that are looking for employees, and we help make the match between local residents and local jobs. And it also provides opportunities for lifelong learning among our residents. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, this is a request for $7,000.
It is.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Well, yeah, just so for your benefit.
I apologize.
I mean, we can, typically we have had the presentations here in the subcommittee process. That's when you would see questions. We want to hear from you and hear about your programs. The lack of questions isn't lack of interest. It's really due to the subcommittee process that we have.
Completely understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is also Lisa Urban from Fidelios. Must be a popular name tonight. Wanted to thank you guys for helping us keep this program. Fidelity House runs a Menominee Manor outreach program going throughout the years. We couldn't do it without you guys, so I'm back requesting funds again for that, $21,000. And obviously, I know you guys work with a budget, but whatever we can work with is great because that program is so vital. We run summer program, they come to our day camp. During the school year, we run an on-site program. Right now, we don't have a gym, so it's harder to run some of the sports programs, but we have been using other gyms and stuff, so a lot of the kids are able to be on our travel teams and participate in programs during the school year also. And then we also look to keep high school youth working and learning how, have a job. And to be honest with you, that age group is really, it's important to kind of reach out and encourage them to work, because it is a frightening experience and they don't have the same support system a lot of times. So that jobs program really is important. And then I added a third one this year. We've never gone into a foray of using other CDBG funding. So I'm new to this, but it is something that's important. So I thought I'd go, but I realize it's a big ask, but we are rebuilding a facility that when we started 12 years ago, we were going to be able to have a firewall and have access to both buildings, and then have people with disabilities able to come into both buildings. And then that changed over the course of the 12 years, and it became 2 separate buildings. And so we're looking to add a fire protection safety. We're going to get one eventually, but it was one of those, rob Peter to pay Paul type things. And so we're now trying to get in a fire protection system into our 1921 building that, as you can imagine, was not built for the safety that fire protection gives now. And then once that's in, we're able to also, the new building is accessible to anyone with disabilities, but our 1921 building is got stairs, so it's not. So we're hoping that we can also be able to join them. And so I'm asking for a little bit of funding for that.
Sure. Don't be shy about the ask. I do appreciate you coming in, and we're all aware of the great work that you do at Fidelity House. And this is under the Public Facilities and Improvement section. You've always been before us on the public services through
Right.
jobs, and Menominee Manor Outreach. And we see the detail. We're excited for you in terms of what's happening down there with the new gym being constructed, and aware of the challenges you have with the existing building.
Yeah, we're aware of them too.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us tonight, Ms. Urban. We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I know it's usually a long evening.
Yeah, no, sorry to keep you waiting.
A long evening for you guys.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's it for in the chambers. We will now, if there are applicants who are joining us through Zoom, we can just go through in the order that you're promoting them, Ms. Mark.
Perfect. The first applicant is Christine Shaw. Just give me 1 second.
Good evening, Ms. Shaw.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Christine Shaw. I'm the Executive Director of the Council on Aging. I've come before you for quite a few years during this presentation, and I really appreciate being here again tonight. I want to start off by thanking you for all of your support of the Council on Aging through CDBG. We have 3 applications in again this year, and I'm going to focus on 2 of them tonight just for the sake of time. They both tie in very closely together. It's our transportation program ask and our volunteer and transportation coordinator position that go hand in hand, and I'll explain that. you see every day that all of the community surveys that we do and all of the community needs assessments show that transportation is a huge factor in people and residents being able to stay where they currently live if they choose to, and also being able to have more equitable access to medical care and really whatever services they would like to participate in their day-to-day life. Our transportation program completed over 18,000 rides in 2024, and we're really proud of that at the Council on Aging. That is mostly done through our two 7-passenger fully accessible vans, and I'm proud to say that we applied for a grant through MassDOT this year and will be receiving a fully electric van replacement this spring. We're one of the first councils on aging to have that, and we're excited to bring that to Arlington in the spring for hopefully a positive environmental impact as well, and being able to serve the same number of people. I also want to point out that those 18,000 rides have a huge piece that is connected to community partners like Arlington Eats and the Arlington Housing Authority, two of our very close friends. We do over 3,000 rides a year to Arlington Eats alone. We're their transportation partner. If people need rides to Arlington Eats, they call the Council on Aging, and we help make it work, and those are at no cost, of course. And then over 30% of our rides are to Arlington Housing Authority addresses, to and from curb to curb, wherever in town they need to go. So all of those folks qualify in the low to moderate income range, as do the majority of all of the folks that use our transportation. In addition to those rides, people are coming to and from the community center. If you've been to our community center lately, we have over 170 people now coming in every single day. The people that come on the van are not parking their cars, which is wonderful. And they are coming to and from the community centers, so they are not isolated at home. They're participating in really important nutrition activities and fitness classes, and meeting with our social workers and our nurses, and really participating with their community in some very important programs. Our transportation also takes people to, access food shopping. We do go to Market Basket twice a week just because of the low cost option of that grocery store. We take people to medical appointments, about 67 rides per month are for medical rides. And we also have a partnership with the Sanborn Foundation, and we schedule 96 rides on average per month for just cancer related rides. The person that schedules all of these rides is our volunteer and transportation coordinator. And that is the second proposal that I just wanted to highlight briefly. That position is a 28-hour-a-week position and does an unbelievably large amount of work for just 28 hours. Because they coordinate all of the transportation requests that come in and match them with an appropriate transportation match. So if a person calls and they're looking for a medical ride to MGH and need somebody that can't be a taxi company to drive them home, we will match them with a volunteer. If they are coming to the community center for a class, we'll match them likely with our vans. But the amount of time that goes into that, and then working with the person to make sure they get to and from, takes quite a bit of time when it's over 18,000 rides a year. And then also that position coordinates over 320 volunteers that help us get our work done at the Council on Aging. We have a small staff, many of us are part-time, and the 320 volunteers really are crucial in us getting all of our work done and all of the needs served by the older adults in Arlington. I did want to also, point out that the volunteers that she is working with, many of whom are helping us with transportation, we always have an ask out for people to help with medical rides specifically. So we do try to keep our costs as low as possible and match people with volunteers when we can. But as you all know, the cost of transportation is very high, especially for people with high needs. And although Uber is sometimes pretty cost efficient, and other times people don't have, the choice over what time of the day their medical appointments are taking place. And as you all know too, Arlington Belmont Taxi is no longer as of last May. So we have been doing a very, very limited number of rides with Green Cab out of Somerville when there were people who need a ride and have no other option. And they've been a very good partner to work with so far. But I do want to thank you. I realize that, our CDBG request is a higher dollar amount. It's compared to some of the others that you received, but it's a flat ask over last year, and over the years we have, as many have seen, gotten less overall for CDBG. So we've made do with a little bit less, but we're asking for $30,000 again this year for our transportation program, and then the volunteer and transportation coordinator position as well. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight and for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Promote the next person.
Hi, this is Andy Dunn. Can you hear me?
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. As I know many of you, I feel like I'm among friends in this room, both from the other applicants as well as the select board members. But I'm Andy Doan. I'm Executive Director of Arlington Eats, and we are grateful for the fiscal year 25 funding that we received for food assistance through Arlington Eats. And this year our application is specific to low to moderate income seniors. We anticipate with this funding being able to serve 725 seniors. This would be either a visit to the market where they can shop for their own food, or it may be a home delivery, which is delivered to their doorstep if they're not able to shop in person due to lack of transportation or ability or medical issue. Seniors make up 25% of the population that we serve at Arlington, and we of course know that many of the seniors we serve are on fixed incomes. And as we've all experienced over the past few years, food inflation is really impacting all of us. And so if you're on a fixed income, you don't have opportunity to increase your income to meet those increased expenses. So many seniors especially are turning to Arlington Eats for food support. And we, of course, are anticipating possible cuts in the future to SNAP. And this is something that we are already preparing for at Arlington Eats, as we believe we'll see more seniors potentially and other residents coming to Arlington Eats for food assistance. But this grant specifically would go towards purchasing things like fresh produce, eggs, and diet-specific foods, whether it's gluten-free, low sodium, or low sugar. We actually had a senior we learned about recently who shared that she had been diagnosed pre-diabetic, and her doctor was telling her that she needed to eat a healthier diet. But she said, I'm on SNAP, I have limited income, and often, the cheapest food at the grocery store is also the least healthy. So she was connected to Arlington Eats and started coming, and as a result, her blood sugar went down and she reduced her risk for diabetes. So really at Arlington Eats, we're not just providing access to food, but we're helping residents, especially our senior population, stay healthy. So we appreciate your time this evening and your consideration for this vital service. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doan. And again, thank you for all the great work that you're doing at Arlington Eats.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Great. Hi, Natasha Whedon. Nice to see all of you here. I am the Recreation Director, and I'm so happy to be here to present to you our CDB application for an ongoing program that we have had with the Arlington Recreation Department for, I'm not sure how many years, but it's the scholarship program. And our request is for $20,000, and this scholarship program allows us to provide scholarships to any residents who qualify under the CBDG guidelines, specifically that are interested in participating in any of our particular programs. Some of those programs include daycare, could be preschool, it could be, after school. Camps in the summer are very are very popular, accessing the reservoir beach, as well as, different programs that we have, basketball, fencing, volleyball, so on and so forth. So we pride ourselves on offering safe, quality, and affordable programming, and we try not to ever turn anybody down that can't afford to pay for any of our programs. We really try to work with all of our folks. We do this because we are a town department and we're sort of like the last line. So we appreciate, that and any funding that the subcommittee would be willing to award us. The ask for $20,000 is because last year we were awarded $6,866, and we actually awarded over $19,000 in funding through the scholarships, and we did that through absorbing some of those funds internally, as well as we had a one-time donation from a outside organization that was able to help us with that. In FY22, we were awarded $11,700, but every year since then, the funding has gone down, and the lowest it's been has been this $6,866. So although, I think the funding is going down, the cost of living is obviously going up, and the number of inquiries that we get for these types of affordable programs continue to increase. So we're coming to you here to, present our application and ask that it be considered. And we will continue working with all of our residents, regardless of what funding we do get. And I just want to thank you so much for this time to present.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Whedon. And I believe this is the first time you've come before us since your appointment as the Director of Recreation. So congratulations on the appointment. I did see you over the fall, but I just want to formally congratulate you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm going to be promoting the next person. I would just ask if you are here to raise your hand in Zoom, just so I know who is before us for this agenda. Thank you. Sorry, it's a little slow on my end. When you're ready, you're able to speak, Mr. Nagel.
Good evening, Mr. Nagel.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. One thing I'd like to mention before I even get started is to extend not only my thanks, but my support for the other applicants requesting CDBG funds. As they've mentioned, and the others that haven't spoken yet will mention, their programs benefit not only our family and senior housing residents, but in many cases our voucher participants as well. So their programs are vital to the success of our program. So again, I extend my support. The project that I'm putting or that the Housing Authority is putting an application in for this year is a repaving project at Chestnut Manor related to walkways in the parking lot itself. Two specific pieces of this project that I think are important there's going to be some major improvements that we're trying to do on the Chestnut Terrace side, which if any of you are familiar with Chestnut Manor, the front side of the building is really the back side of the building and vice versa because of the way that the access to the building is. So individuals getting dropped off at the building or packages getting delivered to the building are typically done off of Chestnut Terrace, which is technically the back side of the building and is set up in that manner. So what we're trying to do is plan out some upgrades that will address that issue in the years to come. And this parking lot project is going to help us make some of the improvements to not only the walkways, making them ADA accessible, but hopefully, making an ADA accessible entranceway on the Chestnut Terrace side. And in, future years, hopefully in the next couple of years, we're planning for add an intercom system and upgrading the vestibule there so that it can be an actual entrance versus an exit way. Additionally, this project is going to help us make some improvements that are going to support the Chapter 689.
Mr. Nagel.
We lost
That,
he's still, the Zoom's still on.
The Zoom, okay.
The Zoom is live.
Hang on just a moment, Mr. Nagel.
We're back.
Okay, sorry about that.
Can you hear us or?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, no, we just lost you on the screen for a moment. Sorry about that.
It's probably for the best. But the Chapter 689, this project will help support the Chapter 689-2 special needs group home because it's going to help support the parking lot improvements that are going to be needed to build that home, as well as some of the walkway improvements that are going to be needed, not only connecting to that group home, but to better access the Chestnut Manor facility as well. And I believe Kim Serra was planning to be on the call, but in case she isn't, we're also requesting funding for our Operation Success program, which is a program for children's grades 6 through 12 in Menotomy Manor, and provides them homework assistance and other assistance at the Life Skills Center 4 nights a week with volunteer teachers from Arlington Public Schools. It's a vital resource that has had, really great success, and is a testament to the individuals that founded the program, as well as to Kim Sarah and Janet McGuire, who continue to run the program today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nagel.
I'll be promoting the next person.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Erica Schwartz from the Housing Corporation of Arlington. And yes, like everyone has said, thank you for having me. It's really great to be able to do the kind of work I do in the town of Arlington, where there is so much support for our mission and for all the other missions of all the other groups that are, I feel like Andy said, we're sort of part of a family here, all trying to do really good work. So the Housing Corporation has requested funds for capital improvements for our older units. So we have 102 units of affordable housing that were built between 1826 and 1966. And we acquired them, between 20 plus and 12 years ago. And the budgets that were made at those times just haven't kept up with the reality of today's economies. And we really need more funds than those budgets allow, and more funds than our reserves allow to keep up with repairs, vital basic repairs that these buildings need to be sustained, so we can really sustain this community resource. Make sure they're safe and healthy for our tenants, make sure the buildings are around for a very long time, and try to make them more energy efficient, which I'll get to. So the kinds of projects that are needed are new roofs, new repointing of brick or foundations, new decks and porches. It's just new kitchens, new bathrooms. It's a range of things, as you can imagine, as buildings age. And we've been seeking this kind of funding, and I'm very grateful that we've received it for several years from the town. Luckily now, we are actually in the process to complete several capital needs assessments for the multiple parts of our older unit portfolio, and develop a comprehensive plan, a comprehensive renovation and refinancing plan, so that we can sort of bring all of our units up to a certain level in one massive project or series of projects. And I would expect that then future CDBG requests would really be feeding into that bigger picture plan that would also incorporate much deeper energy efficiency than we're able to do in these sort of piece by piece projects. But in the meantime, our buildings have deep needs, and this funding is essential to keep up with those needs as they come up as we do this longer picture plan. We actually have almost all of our units have been walked through by a consultant. We have written capital needs assessments now for representing about 40 of our units, and in the coming months, we'll be starting to develop this big picture plan. But for now, we're requesting the funds so that we can keep up with the needs that continue to emerge over time. And I think that's it. Again, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Mr. Helmuth has a request this evening.
Apparently I do.
I don't know why you're pinned.
Hi, good evening. Can you see me?
Good evening. Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Stacy Caruth, and I'm the director for the Arlington Youth Counseling Center. I also want to thank you for this opportunity to come and speak. The Arlington Youth Counseling Center has over 20 years of support from CDBG, and for that, we're incredibly grateful. That allows us to not deny care to anyone that we serve, and not just low-income clients, but costs can be prohibitive for middle-income clients as well, who have inadequate insurance. So as many of you know, the Arlington Youth Counseling Center is a community-based mental health clinic serving Arlington youth ages 3 to 21 and their families. We're the leading provider of outpatient and school-based child and adolescent mental health services in Arlington, offering individual, group, and family counseling, psychiatric evaluation, and medication management. Last year, we offered over 9,800 sessions to clients for a total of 455 clients, and 22% of our clients had public insurance or received grant funding. We're committed to ensuring that all community youth and families have access to culturally sensitive and high-quality care. And to this end, we strive to identify and address systemic inequities that create barriers to care, including financial barriers. We're one of the only providers in the area that accepts youth with public health insurance and provides thousands of dollars of free and reduced care to families who are uninsured or underinsured, or who otherwise could not afford the cost of deductibles and copays. So AYCC uses CDBG funding to provide free and reduced care to low to moderate income families in need of financial assistance. In addition to youth mental health services, we also offer First Step, which is a support group for survivors of domestic violence. Without CDBG fundings, families may have declined necessary mental health services due to financial barriers. And so we are requesting $20,000 in our application this year. And I just want to say this support is really critical to our work. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Caruth, and thank you for the important work that you're doing at AYCC. I can't remember if you presented last year. You had started a year ago. That's what I thought. Yeah. So congratulations on your, I mean, we're a little late congratulating you. You've been on the job for a while, but congratulations on the appointment. I was familiar with your work at China 17 before you joined AYCC, so it's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
I believe this may be the last person, but if you are here and your hand is not raised, please raise it at this time. And when you're ready, Mr. Formicola, you should be able to unmute your mic.
I didn't see his name. I didn't see his hand actually raised in Sam, so I wonder if he's nice to speak.
You can all see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Hello to all the members of the Select Board. Thanks for this opportunity to speak tonight and for the opportunity to hear about all the wonderful work of all the other applicants. It really is inspiring. My name is Tom Formicola. I've been a resident of Arlington for more than 20 years and the executive director of the Arlington Center for the Arts for more than 5 years. Our mission is to inspire joy and nurture growth and build community through the arts. We've submitted 2 applications this year. Arlington Center for the Arts is requesting $5,000 to work in partnership with the Arlington Housing Authority to provide 24 free arts workshops for low-income tenants facing mobility issues and health concerns at 3 public housing residencies, including Winslow Towers, Cusack Terrace, and Chestnut Manor from October 2025 through May 2026. And programs will be planned, promoted, and implemented, as well as evaluated in cooperation with the Tenants Association at each site. This is our second year of doing this program. In year one, the program served 120 participants in 16 workshops at 2 residences. In this second year, we anticipate serving 180 participants in 24 workshops at 3 residences. ACA's successes have all to do with the close working relationship we enjoy with the Tenants Association and the AHA staff, as well as our ability to listen to the feedback and make programmatic and logistical adjustments to suit the needs and the interests of residents in real time. I want to talk to you also about our second request, and that's also for $5,000, and that's for scholarships. And it's because we're committed to making our programs accessible to as broad-ranging an audience as possible, particularly people from underrepresented and underserved communities. We offer need-based scholarships to students of all ages, adults as well as children. We're proud to participate in the Card to Culture program, which is a collaboration between Mass Cultural Council and the Department of Transitional Assistance with the Mass Health Connector and the Women's, Infants, and Children, or WIC nutrition program, the EBT program, and the Connector Care Card program. All of those folks automatically qualify for scholarships from ACA as funds allow. In FY22, ACA distributed $4,280 through 11 scholarships. In FY23, it was almost $8,000 through 24 scholarships. And in FY24, we distributed $13,000 through 30 scholarships. So this program is growing year after year. There's a lot of untapped need. We are intentionally continuing to grow the program. As we sharpen our outreach efforts, we find more and more untapped need in our own community and beyond. And just to give you an idea, we recently served a family that emigrated to Arlington from Guatemala and was in search of opportunities for safe self-expression opportunities for their 2 kids. We've also provided a scholarship to a 4th grader from a single-parent household subsisting on disability income. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to serve these folks and offer them an opportunity and welcome them into our space where we hope everyone feels safe and a sense of belonging.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fumicolo.
Thank you.
And I believe that wraps up everybody.
Okay, all right, so that concludes the CDBG presentation for the applicants. Really appreciate the applicants between coming here in person and joining us over Zoom to let us know about the applications and for taking the time to let us know. We really appreciate it as a board, and now that the subcommittee work will begin. So that concludes our CDBG items. I'm going to go to item 16 and then return to the consent agenda. Item 16 is the town manager evaluation. I left this on the agenda this evening. We don't have the evaluation to present at the meeting this evening. We work in conjunction with Mrs. Malloy. We don't have all of our evaluations in as a full board. There are several that are in, not all of them are in. I talked to Mr. Feeney about it earlier. I apologized. It is not it has nothing to do with job performance, as we saw this evening. The job performance has been outstanding, but we don't have the document to go over. So I wanted to leave it on, remind board members who haven't completed it. I will be putting this on for the next meeting. I intend that will be the meeting we'll present this, but I wanted to leave it here just to explain why there has been a delay in that, and apologies to Mr. Feeney for that.
I know it was very difficult for me not to keep giving him 5. So I know it's a very tough evaluation to get through.
Right, thank you. All right, so now I'm going to return to the consent agenda. There's one item that I do have a little, maybe ask for a conditional vote on that one, but let's go through it first. It begins with item 5, Samuel Whittemore Day and rededication in Whittemore Park, February 2nd, 2025. A long time ago this evening, we already approved the proclamation. We're returning. It's one of the things about taking this out of order. Item 6 is a request to for the Black History Month banners for the period between January 31st, 2025 and February 28th, 2025. Item 7 is a reappointment to the LGBTQIA+ Rainbow Commission, Fiona Perry, for a term to expire January 31st, 2028. Item 8 is a contractor drain layer renewal for Hercules C&G Drain Pipe Restoration, Inc. Item 9 is a request for a contractor drain layer license for Duffy Excavation. Item 10 for approval is an art installation for the Arlington 250th celebration. The item that may ask for a conditional vote on is item 11, request for a special one-day beer and wine license on February 14th, 2025, March 21st, 2025, April 25th, 2025, and May 23rd, 2025 at High Rock Church Mill Cafe for Mill Cafe after hours. Just for the board's benefits, we had informed the applicant they did not need to come this evening. This is similar to the application that we received last fall for that program from High Rock. We did receive some correspondence from Officer Rateau late last week where there at least was a question in his mind and perhaps with the ABCC in terms of who the proper applicant is, whether it's High Rock or the Arlington Brewing Company. We did not have time to clarify that issue this evening. So if the board is so inclined, what I would ask for is a conditional approval on that. If we do find out between now and February 14th that there is no change that's required, we will have the approval. If we receive guidance that the applicant needs to be either a co-applicant or a different applicant, I will put this on the agenda for our next meeting, which will precede February 14th. Our next meeting, I believe, is February 12th. So it's a little bit different than the consent agenda. I just want to explain that given what was brought to our attention. We just had heard that from Officer Rateau. He did some additional work on that, and I plan on meeting certainly with Mr. Feeney, perhaps with Officer Rateau, to get a better understanding of the issues that he's raised there. Mr. Hurd?
You move approval of number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion for approval for items 5 through 10, made by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Mr. Hurd?
And I'll move a conditional approval of item number 11 as outlined by the chair.
We'll have that
And
in the
not to be
record.
repeated.
Well said. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So a motion for conditional approval made by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth. I said that again. Sorry, Mr. Helmuth. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
How did Mr. Feldman
I
vote?
don't
I don't know.
I almost want to go back to my maiden name, make you say Snell, and see what you do with that.
That's right.
Oh, my God, sorry.
Now moving on to correspondence received. Item 17, Broadway Neighbors Coalition Community Design Proposal. This is we had 3 speakers this evening in open forum. They had sent a letter to several bodies last fall, and I received a request to put it on the agenda this evening. Actually, I talked to Ms. Latowski, told her I would put it on correspondence received. And at this point, I believe there may be a motion for a referral that's appropriate, but I'm going to start with Mr. Helmuth on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was glad to see the members of the coalition. A few weeks ago, my colleague, Mr. Diggins, and I met with Vince and Jennifer, and they took us on a Broadway tour. And, I was particularly struck by, I think, their insight in their insight into the needs of the neighborhood, the safety needs of the street, their understanding of the town's constraints and planning process, and the fact that we are doing a lot of safety consideration work at Mass Ave and Appleton and Park Avenue, and we have many priority sites and neighborhoods. But I really appreciated their energy and the positive collaborative nature of what they're doing with their group. I mean, they're certainly advocating for their neighborhoods as they ought to do, but they're doing so in a real collaborative way with the town, and I appreciate that very much. I'd like to move that we do refer this to the town manager, and the town manager may see fit to refer elements of this to TAC, but I'd suggest we make that his call. And one request I would make would be, I know that they talked some about, in their letter, in the document, has some suggestions for short-term improvements, and some of them could be, as simple as extending a crosswalk that's, like the last crosswalk in Arlington that they pointed out to us is really far away from the Somerville and Cambridge border. So I don't have a position on this, but I think I would ask the town manager to work with the safety group, the team, and potentially with TAC to see if it would make sense to do any of the short-term things out before the several years that would pass, for the completion of that. I know that they had asked some specific questions about repaving work that was maybe going to be done anyway, if that would present any opportunities for some short-term, quick build things. Again, I'm not taking position on that. I know that can be a lot more complicated than it sounds, but that should be my suggestion. I would like to give the town manager an opportunity, if you wanted to now comment on any initial reactions you've had. And I know that we had a couple conversations about this in the past few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Feeney?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Though we did have a detailed budget presentation earlier, we did not discuss the capital plan, but I am pleased to report in FY26, with the assistance and support of the Capital Planning Committee, we were able to prioritize $279,000 in funding for the upcoming fiscal year 26, pending town meeting approval, to support the design efforts that were acknowledged in the letter, but also that will be supported by the $1.1 million grant we got through the MPO. So knowing that we're going to be able to provide that local match in the new year has put us on a path where we've already begun preparing the RFP for that particular designer. And as the initial part of that RFP process, we've identified the various scopes of work that we would need that consultant to perform, and that includes a full and comprehensive utility survey, an on-the-ground survey to get dimensions of the road, grades, as well as to conduct a comprehensive parking study. As we were presented with a great concept drawing, but really any near-term or long-term improvements will all flow from those initial studies and analyses of traffic volumes, crash history, pedestrian count. So all of that will be included in the work that's going to be conducted by this consultant. So when that's underway, we may have the data and information necessary to support both short and long-term improvements, but really those things should flow from the necessary study and analysis conducted by a third-party engineer.
That's good news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Diggins?
So, yes, I'm happy to second that. And Mr. Helmuth pretty much said a lot that I was going to say, but I do want to acknowledge, that I think this is real civic engagement, by residents. It's it's well done. And one way or another, let's give our fellow residents a formal response to this proposal, and just kind of close the loop, or at least hit the loop on one of our cycles around. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. And just one further point on this, and I did have a conversation with Ms. Latowski last week, and I am going to talk to Mr. Feeney about this. I think at some point over the next couple months, and we realize everything won't be done, but perhaps we could have an update, whether it's from you or from Mr. Alessi, not necessarily a full-blown response to what's in there, but maybe a little bit more elaboration, what's in the capital plan, and some comments on some of the suggestions too. Okay, so on a motion for referral to the town manager by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Diggins, all in favor say aye. Aye. Right. Item 18 is a request for intersection dedication in honor of PFC Christopher Brine, made by Derek Brine. There's a number of materials in our agenda. Mrs. Mahan?
I'd like to move receipt and refer to the Public Memorials Committee, as well as to our Veterans Director, Mr. McGovern.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan.
Second.
Okay. Further comment? All right.
I'll just say, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a powerful petition. I mean, reading those telegrams, just really hit me. I don't have kids, but we all have loved ones, and thinking about receiving those telegrams, it's like, wow, so, so.
They provided a photo too of them.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, that's it, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Deegan. Yeah, and there is a complete package in our agenda, just as you said, that Christopher Bryan was a 1966 graduate of Arlington High School and lost his life in Vietnam, died in action. And this, we don't make the final dedication, but this is as fitting a request as I've seen. So on a motion by Mrs. Mahan for referral to the Public Memorials Committee and to the Veteran Services Committee, seconded by Mr. Hurd?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Next is new business, Ms. Maher.
The only new business I have is to remind citizens that the warrant closes this Friday, January 31st at 12 noon. So if you have a petition and you would like to submit it, to get it in before 12 noon for town meeting.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Maher.
Thank you.
Attorney Cunningham?
No new business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Feeney?
I would, if I could, take the opportunity just to thank the Department of Public Works, and more specifically the Water and Sewer Division, for their work during an incredibly rough stretch last week. They obviously were deployed for snow and ice operations Sunday night, overnight, into Monday morning for the holiday, and then that deep cold set in, and we experienced 2 water main breaks on Monday, one midday, then one that carried through the night into Tuesday morning. And once that work was finally rectified, the cold didn't go away, and we had yet another water main break overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. So these folks worked continuously for a number of days in the most brutal of conditions overnight, battling equipment failures and any number of things during the wee hours of the morning to get everyone's services restored as quickly as possible. So I just want to thank them for their efforts during that particularly lousy stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Mr. Diggins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 things, mainly requests. The first one, and I'd like to see from Attorney Cunningham, if this is possible. First off, I want to kind of get the parking policy review started. That's one of our goals. And so I'm thinking that I would like to get input from you all, what you would like to see changed, or whatever, and so I'm wondering if it would be okay if my colleagues would just send me their thoughts. I'm concerned about open meeting law. Otherwise, if we have to have it on the agenda, for a brief discussion, then I would make that request, to the chair,
Yeah. I'll take it as a request, and you and I can talk.
Yeah.
Happy to put that on a future agenda.
So, and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be best addressed in an open session and give members the opportunity to voice their opinions in an open session, and we can take it from there.
yeah, and so, okay, and cognizant of the fact that it could take a little while, would it be also okay for them to submit communication at that time? So if they wanted to write something, or would it be okay for them to do it at that time also?
Mr. Chair, yes, if an individual member wanted to submit materials to the board for part of its agenda for consideration on a particular topic, that would be appropriate.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next is Jeff McToos has left TAC, he's resigned, and so I know that the chair TAC would like to, acknowledge that in a little more formal way, so I think he sent a letter, and so So it'd be good if we could maybe have that on an upcoming agenda meeting. And the third, and I talked with you briefly about this, Mr. Chair, but also kind of relates to the report, the budget report that we had today. I think that the redevelopment board's report to town meeting, is a great report. it has a lot of hyperlinks in it, that makes it really easy to navigate around the document. And so my request is that we also do that with the select board report, and I was thinking it'd be really nice if that were the case with the budget, because as I was like trying to go from one section to another, it's like, it'd be nice if I wanted to go to the APD section, if I could just like click a link, to go there. And I know it's a little bit of setup work in the beginning, but once you do it, you're kind of set for doing it year after year, so it's just a friendly request, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Yeah, and again, we won't deliberate on this. We had a good discussion about that, and I think we can make that happen on the select board report. Mrs. Mahan?
Just more of a statement, because I know it's something that's on the horizon, but I had it down for during the budget presentation, but then my inner voice, mini-me, said, be quiet, you've already asked about too many things. But regarding Mr. Feeney's new business, the cold weather, every time, it used to be every time we'd wait for snow and see how many inches and think of our Department of Public Works workers, oh my goodness, out there shoveling, and usually accompanied with really cold temperatures. And now, there's really no snow, but it's unfailing that when it gets to that really frigid, almost unbearable for most people, cold weather, there's going to be a water main burst that those employees have to go out. So that ties into, I know we've all individually and at our goal setting meeting and moving forward have had conversations with the town manager, and I know he's even discussed it, I don't know if it was long-range planning or the audit meeting about the Department of Public Works and the workers and how that job has changed, whereas, before it would mostly be people who lived in Arlington, if not all, and now it's vastly different from that. Not only it's very rare they live in Arlington, a lot of them live perhaps not even in Massachusetts. So, and the manager has spoken about a comparative pay salary study that he's commissioned and is going to move forward. And I know myself, along with my colleagues, certainly recognize that everyone should be paid a fair wage. And I know the town manager, and part of my performance evaluation of him is even before that process has come to an end, has really done as much as he could for all of our workers, union and M-schedule, but especially for the Department of Public Works, along with Mr. Rademacher, to try to come up with ways for compensation, if it's not even direct monetary compensation. But going forward, when that comparative salary study is done, I know we'll all be looking at it, and I've spoken to all the different crafts in town. I really have Department of Public Works, if I had to pick one and rank them, ranked choice voting, they would be up there, and the manager knows that, and he won't give me his number one ranked choice voting because he's thinking of all the employees, and that's what he should do. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you. The only new business I have is to pile on to Mr. Diggins' new business. I think it's a great idea to upgrade the select board report format in that way.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Hurd?
Thank you. It's been spoken about a few times this meeting, but I just want to acknowledge the rededication that's happening of Uncle Sam Plaza for Samuel. My name I was going to say Samuel Whittemore. Yeah.
Not Sam Adams, Samuel Whittemore, got it.
But it's not the start of the 250 celebration, but it's something that we've been planning as part of the, overall celebration. And again, it should be a good event. And I want to acknowledge the work of all the volunteers and the town staff that have put, just countless hours beyond what I can even imagine to put this thing together. It really is, I think for a weekend celebration, some of the, outsiders might not really truly appreciate the amount of work that gets put in to put an event like that together. And so, a lot of department heads in town and, again, volunteers are putting a great amount of work, and we're gonna have a spectacular event. We have very similar to the event we had last year on a larger scale. And so just to, to community members, keep that weekend locked in your calendar because it's not something that you're gonna wanna miss in Arlington. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. I just have a couple items. First, I want to thank Mr. Feeney and the police department. We had, I think a number of us had received an email from a resident who was concerned at conditions in front of a building on Mass Ave where following the snowstorm, it wasn't shoveled. And the police department followed up, and indeed this business, which is a commercial building, it's abandoned now, but still has an owner, didn't clear the snow, and through that follow-up, a citation was issued. And I just want to say, particularly in Mass Ave, busy streets, we have a bylaw, there's an obligation to clear the snow, and the resident appropriately pointed out that was a well-traveled area, should have been cleared. I thank Mr. Feeney and the police department for the quick follow-up on that after that came to our attention. The other thing, we talk about a lot of projects that are being done in the future. There's a project that's going to take place later this year on Pleasant Street involving water mains, and the timing of that project was almost put in jeopardy because of a bid protest that was made by an unsuccessful bidder, and Mr. Feeney had alerted us, and I want to just commend publicly Attorney Cunningham and Deputy Town Council Munson for their quick work in defeating the bid protest. They were seeking a preliminary injunction, which quite possibly could have caused the whole thing to be rebid or certainly put off the timing. They were successful on short notice in defeating that motion for preliminary injunction. I'm told that the suit has now been dismissed. So I want to thank Attorney Cunningham for the quick work. It's the type of thing you don't necessarily see when a project goes forward, but unsuccessful bidders have a right to challenge this. The court found didn't have merit, and so now the project is going to proceed. So thank you, Attorney Cunningham. With that,
Move to adjourn.
Take the words out of my mouth.
Sorry.
Adjourned by Mrs. Mahan. Seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Sorry.